So today we are going to discuss the collections in Java. Okay, and we will cover a few more things related to collection. That is what is called Java generics. So we will understand the framework and try to do the examples around it and try to create our understanding around it. Okay. So before we start, let's first discuss something called the boxing. Boxing is basically a phenomena in which we will treat the primitive data types to be an object in Java. Okay, so as we know that the primitive data types are not an object. Okay, so let me create one program that I will call as boxing. And what we will see in this is basically if we type 1 okay over here and put a dot in front of it, so basically it shows us that since this number, I mean this one or any number, any integer that you type in, okay, without defining it in somewhere, basically that character or letter or number cannot be treated as an object because it will be treated as a primitive data type. So primitive data types, there are like 8 primitive data types. Those are not objects. Okay, and that is the first thing that makes the Java as non-object oriented or not completely object oriented. Basically, you can say like that. Now, what we can do is basically if you really want this number to be treated as an object so that you can perform multiple operations on it. So basically, what happens in Java, like the structure is that you may create a class and then there are a lot of methods in it, and that those methods are basically, it's a kind of utility method basically that can provide you a lot of ways to do the operation on a particular object. Okay, so let's say if you so a string on the other hand, but like it's not a though we use the string a lot of times, so a string is not a primitive data type, it's a complete class. Okay, if you define a string, you will find that it's a complete class. You can just open the declaration of it and you will see that around 3000 lines of code of a string, and there are a lot of utility methods in a string that will allow you to do a lot of things. Okay, and you should always follow the documentation of any class that is coming from the core of Java. Okay, you will find a lot of write up around it. You will find a lot of examples, sample example that how you can utilize that method. Okay, so when you actually do like a lot of development or some code development, basically it's always good to look to the documentation of the Java code. So a string, on the other hand, we were talking about the primitive data types. So other data types like int, float, double, boolean, and there are a lot of which starts with a small. So if I say int a is equal to 1, this is going to be a primitive data because it starts with small I. On the other hand, is name. If I say hadoop on here, this is going to be object. Okay, so you can get lot of methods from the name because okay, we also need to check on static over here. So we will also discuss on the why non-static members cannot be referred within the static methods over here, right? So let me first put it on static, and then I will say name dot. So you will see that now there are a lot of methods coming. Okay, so these all green dots, they're all methods. Okay, if you find some s on the top of it, it will be a static method. Okay, just like if you see these are all static methods. S means static. So for static methods, you need not to define the object, as we already have discussed about it. Okay, because static belongs to class, it means that if it is defined, any method, any variable that is defined to be static in your class, you need not to create the object of that class in order to use those methods or variable. You can just put the name of the class in the front, then put a dot, and then name the static variable or static method, and you can use it directly. Okay, because there is only one copy of that variable or method in the heap whenever you talk about the statics. Okay, now here we will see one problem, not problem, basically it's the nature of Java, that why. So if I define this particular variable to be a non-static, right? So currently I did not put any static keyword in front of it. Okay, and I am trying to use that in the public static void main method. So this method, that is main method, is a static method. Okay, and I'm trying to use a non-static keyword over here. So if I say name dot, I don't get anything. Why? But as soon as I put a static in front of it, it will give me all the available methods out of it. So generally, just to understand very overview level, it's very easy to understand that this is a non-static variable. It belongs to the object instance. Okay, it belongs to object instance of class, right? It means that it will come in picture only when you have created the object of this class called boxing. Okay, so as of now, did we create it? No. If we did not create it, there is no instance of this thing. Okay, so okay, how can we utilize it here, right? So basically, whenever you see any non-static variables, basically that variables will be generated in future. So that's why I am telling it to be a future variable. Future, or comes in future, basically comes in future when you really create the instance of this class called boxing. As of now, we have not yet created. Okay, so if we have not created yet, then how come we use this non-static variable over here? Okay, because this particular thing, this is a present one. Okay, as soon as you define a class and define anything to be static, it will be there. Okay, as soon as you define it as static, the copy will be created for you and you can utilize it. Okay, so this is like called present. Okay, so these are present, this is present right now, you can say. Okay, and this will come in future. So you cannot refer anything that will come in future because you never be guaranteed that it will be created. Okay, how we cannot guarantee that this object will be created basically of a boxing class, right? So anything, if it belongs to class, basically you can just directly use that in just like in terms of a present tense, or in present, like it is present just now. Okay, so this particular piece of code, it is present within the boxing and it is belonging to boxing only. Okay, because since this method is a static method, it belongs to boxing class, not the object that is going to be created later on, because you never be guaranteed that it will be really created later on. Okay, so any non-static things cannot be directly referred within the static one, and that's why, I mean, if you try to refer it, it will give that change the name to static. Okay, if you make this name to be static, so it becomes a static variable and they both are on the same level then. Okay, so this instead of being created in future, if you put it as a static, this will also comes from future to present. So now this will also become a present over here. Okay, and if as soon as you get this, you can now get all the methods out of it. Okay, so this is very important concept. As a newcomer, as a new Java learner, you need to understand that, because so that's why it's being said multiple times. Static belongs to class, non-static belongs to the object instances that will be created later on. Okay, so you cannot refer any ways that non-static into the static one of okay, so non-static members or non-static methods cannot be referred within the static methods. Okay, these are also said to be the members of class. Okay, so this is a variable and this is the method. They both are said to be the member of the class, and we have already spoken about the uniform access principle, where that the Java does not follow basically, in which since they both are the members of this family called boxing, and we cannot have the same name of two siblings, right? If there are two real brothers, we cannot have the name same for both of them, right? But in Java it allows, actually you can have the name of method and the name of variable to be same. Okay, though they both are treated as a member of your class. Okay, they are on the same level. So if you are looking from the outside, it's difficult for you, or not difficult exactly, but it's like kind of confusing for you that how two members or two real brothers or real sister of a same family are having the same name, identical name basically. So that should not be allowed. So in real object oriented languages, that is not allowed. Okay, if you define something in Scala, if it is defined as a variable, you cannot define it as a method. Even Python and R or any other closure, these are all functional languages, purely object-oriented languages. They are not allowing it to happen. Okay, so they are actually following uniform access principle. Java is not following that. Okay, so this is, I think, fourth reason we are talking about that makes the Java not completely object-oriented language. Okay, so that is clear that non-static cannot be referred within the static one. Now what we are trying to do is basically, let me just remove this, and we are treating this int to be in. So if I try to say a dot, I won't get anything. Okay, there is no method will come over here. Even first of all, we need to make it static. Okay, do we get anything? No, not at all. So how I should be able to deal, or how I should be able to treat this number one to be an object, though it is a primitive data type, but Java has given us a way in which we can treat the primitive data type to be an object, and calls the method for doing certain utility methods on the top of it. Okay, so the way to use this primitive data type to be an object is define a class called integer. So Java has provided for every, or for each of the primitive data type, a corresponding class. Okay, and you can pass the instance of that primitive data type into the, or you can pass the reference of that primitive data type into the in that corresponding class, corresponding constructor of that class, so that it will treat that primitive data type to be an object. So let me just show you an example. So if I define integer, so this is a class that will come from Java lang. Now if you see that Java lang does not appear over here in order to in most of the cases when we design the other classes, as soon as we write something and if we are trying to import something, that import statement will come over here, right? So java.lang is by default available to each Java class whenever you start writing. Okay, so java.lang need not to be implicitly imported. Okay, it is always be there. Okay, so though this integer class, it is coming from, if I just put like this, it is coming from Java lang, and if you see, it is not going to be imported over here because by default it is already available over there. Okay, so integer, I will say a1, integer a1 equals to new. Now I am going to create the object of this integer, and I can pass the value a over here. Right, so this integer is the corresponding class for this int. So int is going to be your primitive data type, but this integer is a class in which you can pass the int references, so that any primitive data type of int can be considered or can be treated as a object. Now if you do a1 dot, so basically you will get now a lot of methods, and now this will actually allow you to do a lot of things with that number. Okay, so not number only, I mean you can pass, you can have double, you can have float, you can have other long, you can have other data type, primitive data types, and for each one you will get a class like this. For double it is double, for long it is long. Okay, for a small long it is big long, for a small double it is big double. Okay, like that. A string already is a class. So but yeah, so character, so small char, so if you just define a character, so this is again a small primitive data type, you can say. So I can define a character c equals to, now I can just put only one thing in it, what it says now. Type message cannot convert string to character, so basically I think it should be in a single quote. Okay, so you should put it in single quote. So all the single quote would be character, and all the double quotes would be a string. Okay, that will be treated as a string. So again, I mean this is again one more data type. So we'll not go to discuss like what are all the other data types. There are only 8 primitive data types, so you can just go and read it. Okay, it's not that difficult. Each one of them are like occupying certain bytes in your memory, and depending on that how much overall things can be fitted into the data type is defined. So if you start with an integer, it is having some range from minus to plus. Then if you go to the double, it is having like more bytes are there. Then if you go long, really you can fit very long numbers, okay, in that thing. So depending on like what is the nature of your data, how long it would be. If it is really very big data and the number is very big, then you should go for long. Otherwise, if you feel that, because long will occupy more bytes, integer will occupy lesser bytes. Okay, so if you, it depends on you. It depends on the application, that what data type you will choose. Okay, so so now we can start using this a1 or this number to be an object. Okay, this is what is called boxing. Okay, it means that if you talk about boxing, means what? I mean, we have wrapped the things within the box. Okay, and now that box is getting treated as an object, right? So we pick this primitive data type and box it into the class, so that now we are so boxing or packaging, you can say, okay, or wrapping. Wrap is also one word, WRAPPING, wrapping. So that is called wrapper class. Okay, sometimes this is also called wrapper class. wrapper class. So when you hear wrapper class or boxing, okay, this is what all means that you are trying to treat a primitive data type to be an object by wrapping or packaging or boxing into its corresponding class, okay, given by Java. So that now you can just do to string or whatever, okay, to string, to binary, to x, it will all print the things for you, okay. So if I do syso, if I do a1 dot to string, if I just run it, it will allow me to run, and you got some string representation. You can again do some more things with it, whatever is suitable. I mean, it does not mean that if you define it so you can call everything, because calling other things also requires some prerequisites. So compared to integer, other integer, okay, so this is what I mean. There are a lot of things you can do. So it is out of box. You will get on the fly a lot of methods, utility methods, if you wrap that in a class, and then you can do a lot of things. Now a1 dot to string, so let it like that. Okay, so any questions of now? This is what is called boxing, and we also seen that why non-static cannot be referred within the static variables or static method mostly. Okay, any questions? No. Now what we'll do is basically we will try to understand the things called collections. Okay, now in collection, basically, first let's define what collection is. I mean, what does, I mean, collections are heavily used. Okay, first of all, the collections are heavily used in most of the Java frameworks, no matter if it's a core Java or if you go upper like in advanced Java. If you talk about Spring, Hibernate, Struts, JSF, Angular, there's a lot of frameworks written on Java, and they are like heavily, they are heavily using collections framework. So it's like a kind of a framework. Okay, so we have seen that if you try to make any primitive data type to be an object, it is very simpler to work with it. Okay, so if you try to work on the primitive data type level, basically you need to do a lot of things on your own and try to modify the things, or comparing the things, ordering the things, sorting the things, or like moving the data from one array to other array, and doing some certain more calculations, like converting it to some one form to the other form, like from integer to double, integer to float, integer to string to back into the thing. So there are a lot of things that you may require at the real application. While you are designing real application, you may require those kind of things, right? So basically, if you keep working on the level of primitive data type, it is very difficult for you to handle all those situations, because you need to write a lot of code on your own in order to achieve that. Now what happens is, like Java, since Java has understood the pain of the developer, because it's very difficult since they are not on object basically, and they are not actually following. So if they are not object, then this object oriented concepts are completely null for them, right? So you cannot use any inheritance, you cannot use any polymorphism, you cannot use any encapsulation. Okay, so encapsulation, this is the first time like you heard, because we already have discussed the inheritance and polymorphism. So encapsulation is nothing but just like packaging all the things within a single class. Okay, and so that it is not completely visible to the outside world. Okay, so you need to make encapsulation means make everything private. Okay, so all the variables, all the state of an object make them private, and the those private variables can be accessed through the public methods. That is what is the meaning of encapsulation. Okay, it's just like simple term, simple concept. Okay, hide the implementation of your class. That is what is called encapsulation. So we will see that later more on that. So I mean, that was like some other topic. So what we were discussing is that basically when you talk about this primitive data type, it does not allow you to do a lot of things with it. So boxing gives you a way to wrap it up. So it means that if you try to consider anything to be an object and then treat or then like start doing the work with it, it's always be easier. Okay, so if you work on the object level, there are a lot of utility methods, there are a lot of things that would already being provided by the core Java framework basically, you can you can utilize that. Okay, so this collection framework has that thing in picture or that thing in mind that okay, treat everything to be an object. Okay, and then start working on it. Okay, don't treat anything or don't allow anything that is non-object oriented or non-object. Okay, don't allow anything. So if you work with collection, you need to deal with objects always. Okay, and that's why it is built for. Collections will store only objects. It will allow to do or to perform a lot of operations, lot of utility things, lot of other calculations just by treating them an object. Okay, so even if you put this one inside this collection framework, it is going to be treated as the object only. Okay, it is not going to be treated as a primitive data type. So collection is a framework. Okay, framework means it is designed in such a way that everything that you put inside collections framework will be considered an object, and then you can do a lot of things. So there are a lot of out of box things that you can do with the set of objects. So suppose if you have a class and you created 10 objects out of that class, and then if you want to do some sorting, some ordering, some comparison among them, you can easily do that by using collections class. Okay, so there are three words you will mostly hear out of collections. One is collection. Okay, I will show you over here. Okay, so one thing is called collection. Okay, so collection is basically collection over here is said to be interface. Okay, it comes from Java util collection. So this is a kind of interface, and as soon as we know that it is interface, it means that there are a lot of unimplemented methods over here that needs to be implemented somewhere down the line when you define a concrete class. Then we have one thing called collections. So it's starting with capital C and ending with S. This is starting with capital C and ending with N, not S, right? So if it is not ending with S, it means that it is collection and it is said to be a frame. It is said to be an interface. And collections means this is a class, and this class is having a lot of static utility methods that you can operate on the collection. Okay, so we will see that by example. I mean, this is what you should be remembering. Okay, this is a minute difference because it is somewhat like more. Okay, so over here this is how the collection hierarchy looks like. Okay, this is collection framework hierarchy, in which you will have the collection that is over this one is on the top. Okay, and since it is interface, let's say if it is having around 30 methods inside it. Okay, all those 30 methods, they do not have any body. That is for sure, because they all will be abstract. Okay, they are just designed, they are just having their name and signature. That's it. I mean, what parameters they are accepting, what is the name of that signature, or what is the name of that method, and what it is returning. Okay, so there are like, I mean, I'm just putting that 30 number like it's random. I'm just trying to explain the things over here, that this is an interface. It can have multiple methods that do not have any, those do not have any body. Then it is getting implemented or extended by these three things called set, list, and queue. Okay, so this is a type of collection basically. So list is one collection, set is one collection, and queue is one collection, or you can say this is a type of collection. Again, if you see that they're all interfaces only, it means that so this is the first level, this is the second level. So till the second level we do have interfaces only. Okay, so we do not have any concrete implementation of those methods. Now suppose if this set is having 10 methods more, this list is having, let's say, 15 more methods. Okay, and this queue is having, let's say, 5 more methods. Okay, and this set is having 10 methods. So now down the line, whoever is going to implement this set, it has to give the concrete implementation of this 10 method plus this 30 method, total 40 methods. Okay, so this hash set is a class now that should be implementing all the methods from above these two interfaces. Okay, similarly, if you talk about this list, this array list is the concrete implementation of all the methods of this 30 plus 15. It is going to be 45. Okay, array list, and then vector also, it is also going to implement all that 45 methods concretely. It means that they will define the body. Okay, and if you see, they both are implementing this list, and then list is extending the collection, it means that it is like kind of inheritance. Okay, so array list can see everything that is inside this interface called collection as well as list. Okay, that is what we have understood about the inheritance. And then within the array list there are all the concrete methods defined, and you can create the instance of this array list and then use it as to be the collection, and you can just put the data in it and then try to operate on it. Okay, so if you create the instance of this array list, okay, array list is nothing but it's like kind of an array. That's why it is suggested by the name itself. It is an array. An array means it is having the elements in which you can feed in the values, or you can feed in the objects basically. Okay, and this array list will hold the references of all the objects only. Only objects references are going to be stored in this array list on the 0th index, starting with 0th index and go up to whatever you want. Okay, so array list will be like kind of a dynamically increase its size, and that's what it is famous for. Okay, so we will talk more on that later. I mean because because array is the concept that has been used in a lot of programming languages, or I think in almost all the programming languages. Okay, and most of the time it is 0th index. Its 0th index will have the first element of your data. Okay, so here in the array list basically we are going to store the references of objects. Okay, it means that we are having a lot of objects in heap. Each one of them are referred by certain variables called reference variables. So those reference variables are going to be stored in this array list, so that array list is always pointing, each element of this array list is pointing to one object in heap, and that's why it is said to be, this collection is said to be holding only object references, or only objects basically. Okay, on the overview level. You're getting me? So basically this array list is the concrete implementation of all the methods from the list as well as from the collection interfaces. Okay, so now the same thing will be with the vector. Okay, now what is the difference between array list and vector? That array list is not non-synchronized and vector is synchronized. So all the methods within the vector are synchronized. Okay, and synchronized meaning is basically it's like I'm not going to define it here now. We will do the multi-threading. In that multi-threading you will easily understand what is the meaning of synchronization, or synchronize of methods or variables. Okay, but then just to be having let you know the difference between these two. This is non-synchronized and this is synchronized. Okay, all the methods, all this 45 method in this vector would be synchronized. 45 is just a number that I'm just showing you as an example. It's not actually the same. It may be somewhat different. Then you do have linked lists and priority queue. Again, these are all this is again the concrete classes. Now this linked list is implementing certain methods, all the methods from this as well as from queue. So if you know 13, 15, 5, it means that 50 method would be there over here in this linked list. Okay, are you getting me? So this is how actually they have created a framework in which you, depending on your utility, depending on your application requirement, basically you can use any of these base classes from the collection framework, and then treat everything to be an object, and then do some do some things on it. Okay, so this is a very brief overview. Okay, now if you see the map, so there is a partition over here. Okay, so we do have set, we do have list, we do have, okay, these are like kind of collections, and then one more type of collection is called something called map. So this is always a key and its corresponding value pair. Okay, so map always is going to use for key value pairs, just like in which you need to define a key and its corresponding value. Okay, so key value pair is heavily used in Hadoop MapReduce basically, and most of the things starting from the if you start calculation MapReduce, starting from map to end of reduce, everything is going to be your key value pairs only. Okay, so key and list of values. Okay, we already seen that in one of the in an example, or if not even like when we do the Hadoop MapReduce example, there I will show you that how this list and map mostly. So this is this list and map, it is going to be heavily used in your MapReduce framework. Okay, MapReduce basically, map has come from that map only, where it is started with the things with key value pairs. Okay, and then till the end it will be all key value pairs only. Okay, now